Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the creative uh, creating and animating in Unreal Engine uh, here at Virtual Production Dojo. Uh, I know some of you are in different time zones, but I can certainly promise you're going to have a lot of fun in this creative intensive webinar today. So here at Virtual Production Dojo, we are thrilled to welcome an exceptionally multidimensional talent to the stage today. Joining us is Anthony Koithra, an indie filmmaker who masterfully blends the art of storytelling with the power of real-time technology. What do I really mean by that? Equal parts writer, director, animator, and technical artist. Anthony's work is a striking fusion of painterly visuals and stylized character design, often asking deep existential questions through vampires and spaceships. Based in Brooklyn, Anthony is not only an Epic Games Unreal Engine fellow, but also a visionary toolmaker for the real-time community, building custom workflows that empower creators everywhere. He has taught storytelling for business at institutions like NYU and Columbia, mentored at New Inc. and Unreasonable, and prior to embracing full-time artistry, held leadership roles at Boston Consulting Group, co-founding the BCGDV. Whether he's animating a rogue squadron in Unreal or developing next-generation toon shaders, Anthony's cross-disciplinary perspective is exactly what the future of virtual production needs, and I'm amazed by his talent. So please join me in welcoming the one and only Anthony Koithra.
Hello. Do I turn my camera on now? Is that, yeah, okay.
Welcome, Anthony. Sorry, I could not help doing the whole,
That was very dramatic.
A drum roll with me right now. Otherwise, I could have had the whole royal fanfare for you.
The only thing that was missing was walk-in music, which I feel like we should have discussed beforehand. We could have made that. That was great. Thank you so much. That was very nice of you, G. Like, that was a amazing introduction. I'm so impressed with that description of myself.
I hope I did not get anything wrong.
No, that was all great. I probably wouldn't have been quite as polite, but that was very, very nice. Thanks.
Well,
hi, Flo. Hi, Sheldon. Hello.
Yeah, I mean, I'm amazed by all the work that you have been doing in the fellowship, and you've gone out of your way to help the community selflessly, and you've been working on some amazing, groundbreaking stories, and as a real-time virtual production artist myself, a professor and authorized instructor, there are things that I want to learn, and I'll take your class for sure. So thank you so much for making time in your busy schedule to show what you're working on to the community. And with that, the stage is all yours, sir.
Awesome, thank you. I appreciate that, and no, I'm very happy to do it. I mean, people, when I started doing this a couple of years ago, the Unreal community was just so helpful and welcoming, and embraced me so quickly that I feel like I very much owe it to give back, and as much as I possibly can. And I consider myself still kind of a noob, so like whatever I can share, I'm very happy to share, but I usually end up learning more in sessions like this than I end up teaching. So regardless, thank you for having my and it's really very nice of you all to come. So I hope this is helpful and useful to you. I'm going to share my screen if everybody can just confirm that they're actually seeing this. Are you seeing a man running away from a big scary robot?
Yeah.
Okay.
Before we get started, Anthony, if I can just do a little bit of housekeeping.
Sure.
In case anyone is wondering why your cameras are not showing up or your microphones are not active, it's so that we can have a focused webinar to see Anthony's workflows. The quick Q&A is operational, and Brigitte, the academic director, Brigitte Koithra for Virtual Production Dojo, is monitoring that, and so am I. So if you have questions, we will take all those questions as well. So yeah.
Yeah, and Brigitte and JJ, if the question feels like it's something that is better answered in context while it's happening, feel free to interrupt. Like, I've got no problem stopping it. I prefer more interactive sessions anyway. So I'm happy to do that. Okay, so green light. Should we go? Should we do this? Great. Okay, cool. So I know we've got about 2 hours together. So I'm going to go through a bunch of material. I'll outline that pretty quickly, but I'm going to try and leave some space at the end so we can have questions and kind of cover more interaction and other questions that you might have. Sometimes if there's like these deep, obscure things, 3 levels deep, and if you've got somebody that spent a lot of time in Unreal, it's always helpful to like be able to ask that kind of thing. So I don't have to go over my whole bio again because Gigi did such a great job of it. But the short version of it is I'm an indie filmmaker. I work pretty much entirely on Unreal. I had a very different, very corporate job for a long, long time. And then about 3 years ago, almost a little over 3 years ago, I quit to be an artist full time, and I've never regretted it for a second. I've been having the best time. So apart from making the films themselves, because I'm a big team of one, I have ended up building a bunch of custom tools and pretty much stuff to automate and streamline and speed up my own workflows. And I've just found that it is both a blessing and an enormous distraction because it scratches a different part of my brain, and I really enjoy doing it, but it also takes me away from my film work. But I'm trying to find a balance. It's been really nice to see how many people have found these tools useful, and so like that's kind of what keeps me continuing to make them and build them. So what we're going to do today, if it's cool with you guys, is three separate topics. Well, 3 topics. The first one is we're going to go over my character animation toolkits, what I call LCAT. And 2 of the tools from that toolkit have already been published. They're live, they're free, and completely open source. The first one is the MetaHuman animation tool, which is designed specifically for use with MetaHuman control rigs, both for the face and the body. At a very base level, it's similar to a picker, which some of you, if you come from animation backgrounds, you might have used in Maya or some other animation environment, but it's similar to a picker, but it has a bunch of like animator-friendly utilities that allow you to do a bunch of other things. Ref Player is a video reference player. Video reference has always kind of been a bit of a bugbear in Unreal. Like it's unnecessarily complicated to set up. And then when you do set it up, it's the version of the image sequence that runs inside the viewport, which is a little inconvenient. And so ref players are like a slightly better way of doing that. Then I'll sort of show you the LCAT roadmap. So like the various other tools that are coming down the pike. Some of those pages, I apologize in advance, are a little salesy. I just submitted a mega grant application yesterday for this whole LCAT thing, and so like some of the pages are from that. So you'll see how they work. And then the second section is sort of customization. This is a little bit more technical, and so you guys can guide me on how deep to go here, but I figured I would show the most common question I get from advanced users of Matt, some of them in like small studios, is how to customize it, because Matt is designed specifically for metahumans. And so if you're using a skeleton that's slightly different, like mostly based on the metahuman, but like with a couple of extra bones or extra controls, how do you customize Matt to be able to use it with that? And so I'll show you how to do that. And then the third section, we'll take a short break. The whole thing would probably take about an hour, and then we'll take a short break, and then I'll do the third section, which is what I'm calling metahumanization. And this is essentially how do you take a stylized static character mesh, right? Like there's so many beautiful sculpts out there, like that people put on marketplaces and things, but they're not rigged, and so you can't animate them. And so how do you turn a static stylized mesh into a metahuman, right? And there's lots of different ways, there's lots of different routes. I spent like a year figuring out and testing all of the different tools that are available to do it. And I can show you sort of my workflow, my preferred, and a little bit of an overview of that. This is a kind of short form version of a much longer talk and course that I do. And so this is a little bit of like a teaser version of that, which I compress into an hour, or a little bit less than that. Cool. So does that make sense as a plan for the next 2 hours or so? Okay.
This is great.
Great. Okay. So let's start with the overview of LCAT and kind of all these tools. So the way I define LCAT, the Character Animation Toolkit, is it's the must-have suite of add-ons for in-engine character animation in Unreal. Like, I recognize there are a whole lot of different workflows in which how animators work with Unreal. Like, there are still a decent number of shops that are round-tripping everything. So they'll animate in Maya because their animators are educated in Maya, and then they'll bring it into Unreal for blocking and layout and rendering eventually. But I think slowly we're seeing a lot more people switch over to animating in Unreal, because animating in context, as an animator, I really enjoy being able to see everything basically fully lit, fully like in full color, everything else, being able to interact with objects, like all that kind of stuff, right? You're in the scene. And so it's so much more fun. So I actually learned properly how to keyframe animate inside of Unreal, and so I've gotten very comfortable with it. And so I started building tools essentially to make that process easier. Every time I found things that I was bumping up against, where I was finding friction points, I started building things to take care of that. And the first thing I published was like just the face version of Matt, because the face board, if any of you have ever tried working with the MetaHuman face board, it's such a pain in the ass. Like clicking the controls, it's completely transparent. So you like click through it and select the background, or you select the whole thing, and it's a pain. So I built like just the face version to be able to select those controls more easily. And then I expanded that into the body one. And so that's what Matt is. And I'll show you that in action in a minute. And the second one is Ref Player, which is the reference video one. The things that are coming up are Loco Face, which is a procedural face control rig. And so this will basically take any face skeleton, and without building a single node, you just have to fill out a couple of text things, but without building a single node, you'll have a working control rig for any face. So whatever facial skeleton you drop into it, it adapts and procedurally builds a control rig for it. This is in prototype stage, not quite ready for prime time. I will release it soon. And the second prototype is Loco Scripts, which is just a whole bunch of like automated asset actions and control rig functions and things like that I use. It's a little bit more technical to use, but for the technical artists amongst you, you'll find it really useful. And then further down the pipe, I'll go through some of this stuff a little bit later, but I've got some stuff around procedural materials, stylized materials, procedural animation, things like that that's coming down. But first, what I'm going to do is switch over to Unreal and show you some of these tools in action. Okay, so you guys can see this, right? You guys can see my Unreal window? Yes? Okay.
Yes.
So this is kind of my default layout. Like, this is kind of how I tend to work. I have like a primary, sequencer is not usually on here. I'm doing that for the presentation. I have sequencer usually on another screen, which is below my main screen. And that way I'm able to keep all of sequencer open. So I have access to lots of vertical space, but everything else kind of stays up here. And so this is the window in which I do most of my interaction. And then this is my camera window up here in the top left, right? And so that I'm able to set, and I'm able to see sort of what the final view or render of the shot is going to be like. And I can do all my animation in here. And so this is so I'm going to show you two things, for both Matt as well as Ref Player. And so once you've installed it, the links to all of this stuff is in the deck, so you'll be able to like download these things. They're completely free and open source, like I said. But you'll get a folder called Locodrum, which is inside of the contents folder. And then if you want to run Matt, you just go into the Matt folder and run editor utility widget. Both of these are what's called an editor utility widget. They're widgets built inside of Unreal, completely with blueprints. And like I said, it's open source, so all the code is commented. So if you like reading code, it's all node code, so you can read. It's completely open and easy to adapt. But this is Matt, right? So Matt has both the face and the body. If I try to switch to the face, it's not going to work, because in the sequence, this blueprint only has a body rig open. But if I add the face also and stick the control rig on there, face control rig, this one, and then we have the face control rig over there. Then if I switch over here, we get the face. And so let me show you really quickly what this is really why I started building these things. Like this is normal. This is the current workflow. So now you have to select things like this, right? And you can move things around, and that's great. It's just that while you're working, most frequently select the whole thing or select through the background. And then it's very hard to like keep your camera on the face. There's all these crazy workarounds where you'd have like one camera locked to the board and a back plane and all this stuff, which is all just not, it's like unnecessarily painful. And so what I ended up doing was building this. So you can just select these things and it'll select every tiny control over here. The other big problem is I don't know what these controls do because the labels are too small to read. And so with Matt, as you mouse over before you click or select, it'll show you what the control is, both as a tooltip as well as up here. And this includes every tiny lip tweaker or like the entire set of controls are over here, right? So you have this. And so if I select both of those brows, you can move those up. If I select these, they're already down here. If I bring these, it's like that, right? So it's very easy to control. Now, the other point of friction was switching back and forth between the viewport and the widget, right? So as I would select something here, I'd have to go over here, grab the gizmo and move it. And I'm lazy, so I didn't like that. And so what I built in was, now I can select these tools or select this control, and I can just use the WASD keys on my keyboard to increase or decrease the values. So I don't have to actually switch to the viewport at any point. I can just do everything from the picker itself. So here I'm moving the eyes around, right, with just the keyboard after having selected it. And if you've ever manually animated with this, you'd know what a big deal that is. Like that it speeds things up so much, and you're getting instantaneous feedback. So like that makes a huge difference. So so suppose I've got the one brow down and one brow up like this. The other thing that was missing from kind of the built-in Unreal workflow is stuff like mirroring. And so I just built in a button that lets you very easily mirror poses like that. So right now it's swapping the brows. There's also the mirror match. So if you just want to bring something up to the other one, you can do the mirror match. You can copy poses, paste poses, you can remove keys, you can do all that kind of stuff from here, right? So it's a lot of very handy access to very commonly used elements of the workflow, right, to access the controls themselves. So that's all for the face. And the cool thing is all that works for the body too. So if, for example, let me see, this is a sequence. Whoa, that's terrifying. Let me just do a basic demo of like this sequence. Yeah. So if I've got this sequence and I've got this body here, yeah, so that's the head. You see the same keyboard controls work for the head, for the body as well. And then if I switch the arm to FK and I select the arms, the same thing, you can do the same thing with the arms, right? This really speeds up posing. Just the fact that you're doing right hand and left hand, and so it gets very intuitive after a while. The exact axes that is rotating around, in this case, you can do I have this set up as WASD and Q and E because it's 3 axes times 2, and then that's for rotation, and then you can use Shift and the same 6 keys for translation. So, for example, if I switch this back to IK and selected this, I could also translate the IK control around like that, right? So for posing, this actually speeds things up quite a lot. And so, yeah, like all the same conventional mechanisms still work. Like you can do all the normal things you do. It's just for faces and bodies, depending on how you work, gives you a completely alternative way of doing all that kind of stuff. Now, Hands are another place. Oh, I actually didn't show you this, but like the normal way you would do FK IK switches is selecting the global control and then going to anim details and making the switch here. That's a huge pain and like really distracting. So I just built this checkbox which switches things back and forth between IK and FK for the legs or for the hands, which is way, way faster, right? So that's, and that is actually update. So for example, if I do it here and then it includes switch snapping. So if anybody's seen the kind of thing that happens when your IK control does not follow your FK control, that's all taken care of. All the keys are placed automatically so that you never have that problem. You can just basically stop thinking about it. So for example, right now, this is the left arm is moving with FK, right? So if I select all of these and I key selected for those controls, and then I move it up to here, and then I make the switch to IK, and then I select the IK control and I move it like, well, I made the switch here, and then I move the thing here and move the IK over here. You see, it'll just move between FK and IK completely seamlessly without a snap, right? And that's, again, it's a small thing. Like experienced animators do this stuff automatically, but it just like, it's one less thing to have to think about, right? And so it makes a big difference. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to talk about was hands, right? And so hands are kind of a pain to work with, right? And so like, especially manually selecting all these different controls and things like that, like this, there's the individual FK controls, there's also all these proxy controls, and it's a little bit annoying. And so it's much, much easier to be able to just, click over here and select the individual controls that way. The other thing that's cool is, so I don't know if you've seen this, but there is a control for auto interpolate. So for example, if you select one of these and rotate, right? Like this is the pinky. If I select this, it's like that. And then if I turn, it's weird. I'm not sure why that's happening. Normally, when you auto interpolate, oh, I know what's happening. So the proxy controls, usually that. I'm not sure why it's not. This might be something specific to the sequence. I might have changed something already. But normally these proxy controls, when you select them, and when they're in interpolate mode, it'll move all the fingers. And so that's an on-off switch that you can do, which will switch that on and off. And that should work for both. I'm not sure why it's not happening here, but normally that's another little gotcha. Like I said, all the FK, IKs you can switch in for arms, for legs, for the torso, and for the head. And then the other thing in IK mode, since we have this hand in IK, is you can activate the hand orient. So when you're moving the IK control around, it moves this like that. But then if you need to orient the hand itself, there's a separate, there's this separate control which lets you reorient that. And that is, I think a lot of people don't even realize it's built into the MetaHuman control rig because it's sort of hidden. And so this checkbox just makes it easier to access. Anyway, so the short version of it is that it lets you get into all of the nooks and crannies of the control rig that you wouldn't normally be able to see. And then you can do fun stuff like select multiple controls at the same time just by dragging, with the like marquee selection basically. So you can do that, which is helpful. All animators love a marquee selection. You can also, if you want to make a custom control set, you can Control-Shift-Click on one of these, and you can also rename it if you want. So that's now arms. So you have a custom selection. Normally, the way people do this in Unreal is you go into the pose library and you make a pose, and then you have a custom selection set, which is kind of a backwards way, and this is just so much easier to do. Okay, so that's custom selection sets. It's all of that good stuff. What else? Okay, so world transform. Now, common problem is, especially for props, is how do you quickly get the prop into the right place so the hand can grab it? And so, for example, what I do is this world transform. So I can copy the world transform of that control, grab this, and then paste the world transform. It just pasted the location. You can also paste the rotation if you want. But if you want, you can shrink this down like that so you have it there. But yeah, basically you can do world transform, copy paste. Jizzy, you have your hand raised. Is there a question?
Yes, didn't want to disturb.
Yeah.
This is absolutely amazing, Anthony. You know, because that, as you mentioned, is one of the biggest nightmare for animators, especially if your character, let's say, sitting at a bar, wants to grab
so annoying.
Drink and then put it down. It's always difficult. So when you were copying the world transform, for example, can you actually also show in the details what they are that is being copied, the location and the rotation from the details panel?
Yeah, it is. That's exactly what it's copying. So it so suppose I move this cube away, right? If I put it over there in the details panel, you can see over here, right? Like it's this, which you can change either relative or world or whatever you can see. So but it's copying the world one because we want to align these two separate objects in world space. So it's going to copy, in this case, it's in the anim details because it's a control. And so it's going to copy, this is all relative, right? You can't see the world transform. That's part of the problem, right? You can't just copy it from here and paste it there. But obviously the data exists. And so I'm just pulling the world transform from the game data and pulling. So that's what I'm copying here. And it'll tell you, oh, I copied the hand R FK control up here. And then you can select the thing that's supposed to go there and then paste it, right? Speeds things up quite a lot. I also have a thing which is a little bit more janky right now. It's not quite set up, but like I set up on the control rig, I set up fake socket controls. You know how the skeletal mesh has sockets that you can add, right, to pop accessories on and off. The control, because I can't talk directly to the skeletal mesh, I talk to the control rig through Matt. What I do is on the control rig, I just add sockets in the correct places. And then I can add, that'll kind of locks in the correct rotation for a particular weapon or prop or whatever, that kind of thing. And then I can define in this settings panel over here, I can define that this is, it's a little bit of a hack. It's not quite ready for prime time, but it is totally doable and usable. I use it for my own thing. You can also, some people don't like the WASD, the key control that I was talking about. Some people don't like it because it does use keys that otherwise, if you're in viewport, are different hotkeys. For example, W is obviously translation and movement. And so some people don't like, so if you want, you can turn it off too. You can also make it more sensitive. You can change the increments and things like that. That's what the settings thing is for. The last two.
Talking about the sockets, for example, could you just go a little bit deeper into the sockets? Now, of course, most of us, we started in Power Animator and then Maya, and that workflow is still very prominent within the industry. However, as you very well know and has been using Inside Unreal, it's just a no-brainer to streamline your animation workflow, keyframe workflow.
Exactly.
So somebody coming from Maya, when we talk socket and Maya versus socket and
it's a different thing. Sure, totally. So the normal conventional, my sockets are fake sockets, so I don't want to confuse people. But like so the conventional use of sockets is if I open up the skeletal mesh of like the hand section of this metahuman, this is just the hands, but it's actually the entire skeleton. Right? So you have the whole skeleton here. So this is a socket that I added. This wasn't originally there. On the hand bones, I just right-clicked and added a socket, right? And a socket is something where you can add a prop. So for example, if I add a preview asset, let me see if the katana show up. Yeah, right. So this is, so you can add the katana, but now it's in the wrong place, right? So the thing you can do with a socket is set it up to be in the correct place, right? I'm gonna do this quickly because we're live, but you can set this up to be in kind of where you want it to show up always, right? So the correct rotation and everything else. So it sets up, so now that's a socket that's kind of set up, which you can use. So the next time when you're in the game or in your like animation view and you you attach the sword to the skeletal mesh, you can say attach the socket and it'll connect. Now, I wanted that kind of functionality for the control rig. And so because my tool is not talking to the skeletal mesh, it's talking to the control rig. And so what I do in the control rig itself is, let me close these. What I do in the control rig is mannequin rig. I believe it's this, or it might be in MetaHuman. This comment. Yeah, MetaHuman control rig. So in here, what I do is I add a fake socket to match that same thing, right? So I add if I go to this hand, yeah. So I add this control underneath the default hand FK socket. I add a hand L socket. I give it that name. And then inside of Matt, I tell it its hand L socket is the name of that control, and hand R socket. I did the same thing for the right. And so I can take whatever prop and then snap it to the control rig through Matt if I do that.
Yeah. So just so if anyone's wondering, in Maya, the old workflow used to be we would add a virtual bone to the hand for which is a prop bone. And then, when we are doing the rig, that's what we would call upon to snap to and so forth. So this is just such a time saver, small thing that you've shown. Once you get your head around this is such a big time saver, especially when you're on a production.
I mean, so many of these things are like, often it's like reducing something that's 4 clicks to 1 click. And like when you do it, if you only do it once or twice, that's not a big deal. But if you do it 20 times an hour, like it makes a huge difference. And it lets your brain, again, like I said, I'm a team of one, right? So like constantly switching between technical brain and artistic brain is hard. And so the more I can stay in one of my brains, the happier I am. And so like that's what most of my tools are about. Anyway, so that's so we talked about World Transform, we talked about all that stuff. Tweening is the other thing. So obviously Unreal has like the built-in tween tool. I don't like it very much. And so I built a version of the kind of like Animbot. If you used Animbot, you'll recognize this interface, and it's basically exactly the same. So for example, if I suppose I do, let me kill all of these keyframes so that this one's not moving. Right. So if I've got the yeah, let me kill all these. Right. So now the right arm's not moving at all. And so suppose I do this and then have, okay. And then over here, I do this and then move it up here, right? So we've got this motion that's happening here. What I can do here is do a tween or overshoot. So if I make this 130, then we have an immediate overshoot and then settle, right? So it like goes over and comes back, goes over and comes back. Or I can do a tween. Suppose I get rid of those. suppose I do this and say, go all the way to like 80% so that it'll go, you see that? So it like does the most of the movement here and then comes back, right? So you can do all of that kind of standard tweening and movement and everything. You can switch to either regular tween or blend to neighbor, all of that stuff. So like you can do, like you can do anticipation here, right? So this will go back. So it'll go, you know, down and then go up. So you can do all that kind of stuff. And then there's also this, which will move the keys to the left and right of the playhead. So if you want to manually, so if you keep an eye on these keys, you can move them towards the playhead or away from the playhead. You can move the keys before, back, or forward. Like these are all, again, small things, but it's faster than marquee selection and then dragging and all that kind of thing. The thing I used to most commonly do is select all these and then do control left or right, which also works. It's just, I just often find it easier because I'm spending so much time up here to do this. And you can change the number of keys that it moves by. Okay, so much for Matt. I guess that's most of the stuff for Matt. What else did I? I guess the only other thing was you can also obviously select all controls, or if you've got some controls selected, you can mirror your control selection, so it'll like switch which is selected, things like that. I think that's more or less everything for Matt. Let me stop really quick and ask if there are any questions about Matt. Is this the kind of thing like folks are used to using in your workflows, or does anybody use pickers or anything like that? Yeah, okay.
Put the question in the chat for everyone as well.
Okay. Okay, cool. All right.
People coming out of the Maya workflow, or now with Blender, you know, being one of the most popular one as an open source, and kind of bringing ZBrush and everything else together. I think people are getting used to it, but personally for me, when I kind of switched to Unreal, and that was when it was Unreal Engine 4.23, maybe I'm showing my age now.
Yeah.
But with that, and when I started working with the timeline and started keyframing, it was a backward logic for me for some reason. And my brain was like, okay, I was going on the 5th gear. Suddenly somebody just hit the reverse gear.
Right. Yeah, all your muscle memory, memory is broken.
I think that is where a lot of people in the industry from studio perspective are sometimes wary of jumping into Unreal because it's a brand new workflow.
Right.
But you know what you've just shown, I mean, that's common sense logic, literally. And it's like, okay, yes, it is building that muscle memory. Do it once, do it 10 times. And then next day, it's like, okay, I'm just working with the WASD keys.
Yeah, you eventually, it just becomes your muscle memory. And so, yeah, for sure. And like really what I'm trying to do with this is reduce the barriers to people animating in Engine. Because it's often, you know, if you've learned in Maya and you have all, or any whatever other platform, it's hard to switch to make that gear switch to Unreal sometimes. Okay,
so saying he's used pickers back.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
in undergrad, so he's very happy with the similar tool that's in UE now.
Great. Okay, so the you'd asked that I talk a little bit about layout as well, right? So let me do that real quick. So if I don't have Matt open, I can just switch this to the default layout, right? Default editor layout. Yeah, so I guess you start like this. I am one of those weirdos that likes the outliner on the left. This is not a normal thing. And I think it's because I started learning in Max, and Unity also has it on the left. So, you know, don't judge me, but I keep my outliner on the left. I know that's strange. And then I keep, like I said, sequencer and details and stuff like that on the right. There's a logic to it in my brain where you like select stuff on the left, and then you can see the object in the viewport, and then you have the details for it on the right. So it like goes from left to right. But
Hey, that is still better. When I'm working on my productions, I actually moved the timeline to one of my screens on the left.
yeah,
So then I have
that's
the full screen, which is my
no,
sequence
that makes
timeline.
sense. I actually keep sequencer on a separate screen. I don't keep it up here. I keep it on my separate screen. So I put it over here. I just have it here because I'm only sharing one screen, so I want to make sure it's visible. But then the other thing is I usually have a second viewport open, and I dock that over here. This is not cooperating. What is happening? Did something just break? I think we're. Okay, it hung. Let me close this and start again. Oh, here we go. Okay, cancel, not hung. There it is. Okay, so I usually keep this for the camera, right? So I like to have my camera view over here and then my manipulation view over here, right? So I like to do stuff in here, but I can see what the camera is seeing over here. And then I've got my outliner down here on the left, and then there's this. When this switches to animation mode, right? So let me select a control rig, and it crashed. Now it crashed. Okay. I don't know if it's just you guys, but I have very common crashes when switching to animation mode. I don't know if that's just a me thing.
I believe that's a bug in 5.5.4 at the moment. It
Oh, it's a
randomly
5.4 thing? Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. It's a 5.4 thing? Okay. Yeah, I have that kind of stuff always.
Message that comes up in 5.5 anyway.
Okay. Yeah, that happens to me all the time in 5.4. I've been using 5.4 for probably longer than I should be, but my main projects are all in 5.4. Okay, let me hide all the naked men, and we'll come back to them eventually. Okay, I'll open up the sequence that I had open before. That was this demo one. But actually, the reason, let me go into Katana, because this is what I was going to start showing you, which was the reference video. So this is a separate sequence which I built based on a reference video. And if you ever tried to use reference video, you're a keyframe person, and you ever try to use reference video in Unreal, the process is a little complicated and longer, unnecessarily long and complex. And so I made this little widget that lets you it'll find all the image sequences that are in your Unreal project, and it'll like make them available for you to like use as reference. So I have this video and I have it synced up to my sequencer, right? So here, as I scrub the sequencer, my reference video is scrubbing at the same time, right? And it stays fully synced. So common workflows I've seen where people are using keyframe MP or some other external video player, like a frame-by-frame video player to play reference video. You sort of animate, switch alt tab to the other window, advance it one frame, keep it always on top. Like that's the typical kind of workflow, which is fine. It's just painful. And so here, what I'm able to do is like go frame by frame, animate, and I'm seeing the reference video go at the same time. If I want to use a different part of the video, I can also unsync it and then move this to a different part of the video, right? Like, so if I wanted to animate the beginning of this one, I can sync it here, and now it'll play from this part, right? So it's just it's very simple. Like that's literally all it does. But for a lot of animators, this is like a huge bugbear, because the recommended workflow is to drop the image sequence into the viewport and attach a camera to that, and which is, again, more work than really should be necessary. And if you want to switch back and forth between multiple reference videos, that's even harder. So I hadn't thought of this when I built it, but there are people using this for facial animation, and so they have facial reference video of like an actor's performance, and they're using it for that, right? And that would be impossible to do if it was inside of the viewport. And so, and now I have like a long. Sorry, go ahead.
That's pretty much the use case scenario that we are looking at for our in-house production for Oyun's Quest as well. For the next episode, especially doing the close-up shots. Yes, the audio to face, the lip sync works brilliantly for metahumans, but then it's about the emotional cues. How do you do those? That's where your tool sets actually cater, not only for the face but the body. But now, if somebody's squinting,
you catch that. Little micro expressions and stuff like that. The kind of thing you only really see when you're going frame by frame. It's that type of thing. Yeah, so this is a lot simpler than Matt is. Like it really just does the one thing. But that is for a keyframe animator, it's a pretty important thing. So yeah, that was the big thing. Oh, Jeezy, you wanted me to show doing poses too, right? So let me open up Matt again, and I'll run that. And so I usually dock Matt up here, so that I have it up there. And then when it switches to animation mode, everything goes haywire always, right? Like it just Unreal has like this seizure and like all the layout changes and everything. And so I put the animation menu, I put that up here, and then animation outliner always displaces this. And so I place that over here, and then I have anim details and details over here. So, okay, so now we've got the animation window up here and the viewport up here, so our camera view. And so what we were talking about with poses was, so suppose we grab this, right, and we select all of the controls here, right? So right now we've got all of this is all the face controls. Oh, it's the face, yeah. What we want is the body. And so we select all the body. And now, since we have a mannequin in here, right, in the outliner, let's just pull him into the sequence so we can control him also with Matt. So if we drag him in here, his control rig is added automatically. And so now when we refresh the list in here, we can also connect to the Manny. And so because they have effectively the same skeleton, we can also talk to that skeleton, right? Now, what we wanted to do was with the Dex, with the guy holding the katana, we can grab his whole pose, right? So we select all of his controls, and then most of you have probably seen this, but this is Unreal's built-in pose library. I don't love it. I think it's fine, but like it leaves a lot to be desired. The next version of Matt is going to have a built-in pose library that lets you speed up a lot of things. But for now, once you have some control selected, you can create a pose, right? So we can give this a name. Let's say Katana 1, because it's the first pose, the katana. And then it also will let you capture a thumbnail if you want something a little bit clearer. You can grab that, right? So this is a pose, right? And again, given that they have basically the same skeleton, we can apply that same pose to Manny. So suppose we select Manny instead, right? And we select all of his controls like that. We can paste the pose onto that, right? So we can paste it there. We can, if we want, we can paste it mirrored, all that good stuff, right? So we will, it's very easy to like quickly build out a pose library if you want to with a set of poses. I use it most commonly for fingers, but just because that's hard, they're hard to pose. But so I have like a fist or a point or things like that, and so I build that out. The other thing I do is actually add stuff to this favorites window so I can categorize it, because controlling what folder pops up over here is a real pain. Like this, like I said, the pose library in Unreal needs some work, but it, yeah, anyway, I usually just add stuff to favorites and I can do that.
It will be as easy as right click and add to favorite.
Yeah, for any folder, right? For
Um,
any, yeah, so for any folder, suppose you're keeping all of your poses in, suppose I do a characters and a new folder here called poses. I can right click on this and add to,
just above the star.
where is it?
Set color, under set color. In the
Set.
second one. So
In the what?
if you come down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 from the top.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, add to favorites. Completely blind. Yeah, so now that's in favorites. And then let me close this. And then here inside of your favorites folder, it's there, right? So you can add, I organize things like face poses, finger poses, stuff like that. Like I just usually add stuff over here and put it.
I have one quick question,
Yeah.
Especially from the fact of, coming from the cinematography background, do a lot of close-up work as well, and dialogue work. So my digital humans usually are in the shot, the magic camera moves. So obviously, when it comes to micro expressions, now micro expressions or expressions, smile to frown to,
Sure.
now MetaHuman has a library of poses that is available, out of the box,
Which are pretty good.
If we wanted to use that and then to make those changes and
Yeah.
then save those for future custom
Yeah.
characters, maybe I'm jumping the gun here a little bit.
No, you totally can. So, for example, under where are those poses? They're under common.
And the common,
and
the pose library.
here. Yeah. So it's this, right? So if we add this to favorites, right? You just do this, and then you've got expressions here. So suppose we go back to Dax over here, right? And then we switch to his face. Let's see his face more clearly, right? Like that. And then suppose we select all, right? We can paste poses like this, right? So we can do this. Like I was saying, the next version of Matt is going to have this built into Matt. So you can very quickly scroll through all of that, have different libraries and folders and all of that kind of thing. But yeah, that's gonna coming soon. Coming soon. Right now, this is the workaround. This is what I do too, but eventually it'll be built into that. Cool. Okay, so that was Matt, Ref Tool, Ref Player, a bunch of layout stuff. We talked about posing. I think that's pretty much it for the tools section. I was going to walk you, if you guys are interested, I was going to walk you through like the roadmap for some of the stuff that's coming up. I apologize again. These are like comments, and like I said, this is for my run application, so I'm trying to big it up as much as possible. So this is a little more boastful than I would normally be.
Just so you all know, this is insider news. You're the first ones.
You are.
About there and see them. Okay, this is your goal now. This was not planned. All right, go for it.
Yeah. You are the first audience to see this live. So this is some of the stuff that's coming out for LCAT. So you saw Matt and you saw Ref Player, right? The next thing I'll release is LocoFace. This is designed, like if you've ever tried to like set up a character from scratch and the face is a non-metahuman face or something else like that, I mean, assuming that it's already been weighted, right, inside of a DCC or something else, it's just setting up the control rig is so painful, right? Like it's very, very, very difficult. And so I was trying to ease that pain, basically. So this will procedurally, you have to define things like this. So you have to like say the head bone is called head, the face root is facial root, the left tokens, because bones are usually defined left and right, that kind of thing. So you say, how do you tell a left bone? How do you tell a right bone? The eyes, you have to set up this stuff, which is all just text. You don't have to set up, make a single node, but it generates the entire face rig, including all the sliders and all of that stuff procedurally, right? And so this is a Fortnite character. And so this is just using that one, but it would adapt. It can adapt to pretty much anything. And I'm setting up templates so that you can automatically recognize a Fortnite character or a character creator character or whatever, right? So the most commonly used is face skeletons.
Okay, this is mind blowing, Anthony. Personally, I've become lazy since I got into Unreal Engine. Thank you, Epic Games. Reason being is I'm a DIY kind of guy, as in I prefer what I can pull out of the box and use.
Yeah, you'd rather not roll your own if you didn't have to.
So when it came to control rigs, for example, right, I tried to avoid the blueprint control rig as much as possible.
It's a lot of work, yeah.
However, what I ended up doing was creating more work for myself by not creating custom control rigs. I started reverse engineering the current ones to fit my characters. I mean, they work perfectly, right?
Yeah.
But I end up spending more time at times doing this. So with this, you're saying I could have a character from Character Creator or from custom character out of Maya, sculpted in ZBrush, taken into Substance Painter, and rigged customly. And this will create a custom control rig for the entire face, as long as the morph targets, everything are there.
Correct. Well, so it does only bone deformation. So no morph targets currently. Eventually I'll get there, but no blend shapes, no morph targets yet. It's all bones. So just bone deformations.
Well, while we are putting out wish lists for Christmas, we ask for the full body.
Yes, I'll get there eventually. I mean, it's kind of what they're trying to do with modular control rigs. Like that is the thing. It's just that system is brand new and it's very buggy, and so it breaks a lot. And so so eventually that is the route. So eventually I will publish this as a modular control rig. Right now, I have it set up as a kind of procedural thing that's built off of templates, just because the modular control rig framework is a little weird. What is that, Sheldon? The baby auto rigger? Yes, that's kind of exactly what, in this case, it's just for faces, but I'm eventually going to do that for like bodies as well and all of that stuff. Like I will eventually get there. Cool. So that's LocoFace, and LocoFace is a component of. So LocoScripts is the other one. This is kind of a grab bag of a whole bunch of different scripts, just automation things that I use very often. So like when I make a custom metahuman, I have a thing called set metahuman face or body, which will copy all the correct materials into place. It'll copy the correct default animation rigs into place. It'll copy the post-process blueprints, the anim blueprint, all of that. So it just sets the thing up. These are sub-functions inside of the control rig graphs, which will let you spawn a slider and constraint controls and a bunch of things that I use as sub-functions. Copy tracks is kind of interesting. This is a so this lets me actually copy. I can retarget metahuman animation, facial animation, onto a completely non-metahuman face. using this script. So I basically set up, a retargeter, just a regular retargeter that you use for body motion from like one skeleton to another, like Mixamo to metahuman or vice versa. I set up the same thing for faces, and faces obviously are significantly more complex, but retargeters will really only do the rotation correctly. My copy tracks utility will copy location keys at a key level per time. It'll copy the location data as well, and that gives you actually quite good replication of the metahuman facial animation on a completely non-metahuman face. So that you can do things like facial capture with an iPhone for non-metahuman faces. And so I have
one thing that a lot of what we are seeing in our closed channels for the fellowship, a lot of people are using the metahuman performance audio to lip sync, and then they're transferring it to, let's say, the auto rig functionality for character creator, or their own control rigs out of Maya that they bring in into Unreal. Yes, we can copy all the key frames out of once we baked it to the control rig and paste it over, but everything
but the bones are all different. So like
and it's just great. So how are you working around that problem?
Yeah, so the retargeter is the first part of it, right? So it does the translation, and then the script allows you to define which bones correspond to what. And so you can use the retargeter chains. So instead of retargeting, normally you do on a chain. Exactly. Yeah. So you can use that same correspondence that's built in there. You can do the same thing and then do that transformation. So that's what this is doing. Again, not quite ready for prime time, but like what you can see in this is these are Fortnite skeletons. So like the Fortnite simple face is completely different from the metahuman face. Yeah. This one is the new Fortnite face, which is like a dummy version, dumbed down version of the metahuman face, but it gets quite good replication of the lip sync and everything else, right? Like it's pretty good. This one just has less bones in it, so it's not quite as good, but it still gets you like 80% of the way there. So the reason I built both the control rig as well as this is to be able to do metahuman animation and then to fine tune it with the control with LocoFace for performances on Fortnite characters or stylized characters, things like that. Okay, so that's LocoFace and LocoScripts. Further down the road is LocoPaint, LocoWalk, and LocoBoing. LocoPaint is basically a way of getting non-realistic for like NPR, like non-photorealistic textures and materials for metahumans because it's a standard topology. So I have a bunch of hand-painted faces and things like that we can use for basically any metahuman. So it's a multi-layer material for shadow map or different kinds of like stylized looks, and then procedural eye material, which you can see in action over here. This is basically replicating the arcane eyes that everybody wants. And so the catch light, everything is like kind of hand painted on, but it's in 6 different layers. So you can animate everything and get like a lot of motion in the eye.
This was all coming out of Substance, custom painted.
I do most of my painting in Photoshop, but yeah, I mean, effectively, it's because the textures are standard, like the layout of the texture is standard for metahumans. So I just
as long as the UVs are matching, it should.
Yeah. And so no matter whatever your geometry on the metahuman is, the texture is the same. And so that also just makes for such nice transportability. You don't have to repaint the textures for a new model, right? You can just change the geometry and like switch them around. So that's LocoPaint. LocoWalk is, I don't know if you guys saw Cascadeur release the in-betweening feature. So LocoWalk is actually kind of like that. It allows you to, but inside of Unreal, right? So if you just move the root of the character, it'll calculate walk, like stride length and things like that. Yeah, so procedural walking and stuff like that. And then
use a sample.
This is I've literally just started work on this. So it's like I'm not sure.
That's going to save so much time, especially for educators, academics. I mean, myself included. teaching the masters in fine arts for virtual production. A lot of students these days jump into animation, but they don't understand the 12 principles of animation necessarily.
It's a lot of work to
and walk cycle is one of the hardest things to kind of pin down.
Yeah.
I would never say that I'm perfect in it. Now that
I suck at walk cycle. Yeah, for sure. No, it's really hard. And what I try to do with most of my tools is like the things that like aren't fun to work on. Try to automate them as much as possible, right? And so so like, if I move a character's route, like the character's not floating from one place to another. So if I can get like kind of 70-80% version of the walking done automatically, I can do the rest. It's just doing it from scratch is so much work, and it's just like it slows you down.
Well, I have a burning question for you, sir, and that is with your local walk. And I know you're going to get a lot of questions about the same thing. Can we make the character go up and down stairs?
One thing at a time, dude. Yeah, but in the current state, absolutely. In the current state, it doesn't work. So eventually, I'll get it working.
You don't want to see that.
Yeah, of course. So yes, eventually, I'll integrate it with foot traces so that it's able to do that. So it'll get there eventually. That is definitely what I want as well. And then finally, local boing, which is dynamics and secondary animation. So like, yes, there are a bunch of nodes for, swinging antenna or hair or all that stuff. It's just, they're very hard to set up, and you have to tune them so many times, like all that stuff. It's so much work. And so this is just a set of presets. So it's like, this should behave like loose clothing. This should behave like antenna. This should behave like a dangling accessory, things like that. So it's just presets basically they're like pre-built bunches of nodes that you can just attach. And
give me a moment. I'm going to send a quick text message to Chase Cooper at Deck, and tell him, all right, don't worry about building that because Anthony's got you covered now.
No. Well, so the thing is, Chase needs to fix modular control rigs so that it's stable enough that I can build all of these things as modular control rig modules. Then
going to build upon the modular control rig functionality that is currently in experimental mode.
Exactly.
5.4 it's working, but 5.5 it is currently broken. So okay.
Yeah. So this is not going to be out before 5.6 is out. So hopefully in 5.6 modular control rig will be working, and then I can just release those things as modules.
So it's adding on top of what is there. So you build your rig in modular control rig as a visual artist, and then you use local boing.
Yeah.
I need to get used to that name.
Boing.
Well, there you go, folks. He's an animator. So that makes perfect sense.
Anyway, so that's what's coming. So and all these things kind of obviously fit together, right? Like these things all kind of plug into each other, and eventually at the end of not this year, but the end of next year, I plan to release Matt 2.0, which will integrate all of these things. We'll talk to Matt and everything else. So in theory, all these things will work together. That is the plan. Anyway, I've been talking for a long time. And I know I promised you guys a break. So we didn't get to customization, which I think is okay. Maybe we take the short break now and then switch over to metahumanization when we get back, which is the character creation.
I think 10-minute refresher for everyone to stretch and get a cup of tea, coffee, whatever they wish. And in the meantime, folks, if you have any questions or any thoughts, please put it in the chat or Q&A, and we'll go from there. So see you all shortly.
Okay, cool. All right.
All right, everyone. Hopefully, you had a refreshing break, and I, for one, am looking forward to the meta-humanization, Anthony. So that word is really intriguing, suspenseful. So tell us what is meta-humanization?
Absolutely. Cool. Yeah. So the 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 reason I spent like literally a year trying to figure this out, and metahumans are great, right? They're like so there's such a powerful character platform, right? They're really very photorealistic, super detailed. Geometry, the textures, everything is great. The problem is they're very realistic, and it's designed for a single specific aesthetic, right? And yeah, it's a really commonly used aesthetic. Sure, for digital doubles and things like that, that's great. But everything I do, like I like for me, if you're making something that realistic, you might as well be doing it in live action. And so like I really enjoy very stylized characters, right? Like it's one of my favorite things about animated content, in that you can say things about a character from just the shape, their character shape, right? Shape language and things like that. And so I love detailed character design. And I used this as an example, my friend Ernesto in Brazil, who does these incredible sculpts, right? Like that's Ed Harris, obviously, but they're incredibly detailed, very, very beautiful sculpts. And weighting that and setting it up for animation is really hard, right? Like weight painting is incredibly difficult to do. And so again, I'm team of one, so I don't have the time or the years to spend learning how to weight paint, right? To do this, but I have a lot of stories that I want to tell, and so like I'm always looking for shortcuts and hacks. And so the prompt was like, how do I get metahuman level control and animatability on any input mesh, right? So if I get a really stylized mesh like that one, how do I do that? And it turns out I'm not the only person that has wanted to do that. There's a lot of software out there that will help you effectively make that happen. And so the kind of big choices up front are, do you want to just do the head? Do you want to mainly do the body? Do you want to do the whole thing? Like all that kind of stuff. And then second one is, what is your software stack? So are you a Maya person, Blender person? Do you not want to use Houdini? Do you want to not use any plugins? Because most of these plugins are paid to a certain extent. And so like, what's your comfort level with the software available? And then what are you willing to spend on it?
Now, I'm on the other side of the spectrum with my research, and my work predominantly is in ultra-realistic digital humans with emotional and empathic responses. I tend to dig myself under the uncanny valley, So it's not only that, they look so realistic that it breaks the whole thing, but also for the fact that if you cannot get them to work the way human body, the body dynamics, the IKs work, and a lot of animators who learned with keyframe and animation understand that. But these days, with emerging tools and motion capture, AI video extraction for mocap data, yes, the technology is making us lazy, but it is also breaking the stories because people snap out of it.
Yeah.
And I think what you are doing as a toolkit altogether, whether it's fully stylized or is it a realistic one?
The toolkit is applicable regardless, right? Of the LCAP is applicable regardless of what style you're working with. This stuff is more for stylized looks. I have a list of artists later on at the end, people that are doing, and it's the whole range, right? Like very stylized ones, and then people like Elvis Morelli who are doing extremely realistic, like very, very realistic looks. So this process is applicable regardless. The most common use case is likeness sculpts, right? So if you're doing a digital double of an actor and the metahuman needs to look just like the actor, 3D scanning, like scanning of the face, and then you kind of adapt the face mesh to that shape, right? But yeah, and it like there's kind of this upfront set of choices, right? Like, what do you want to do? And so if this is an attempt at like putting the entire option space onto one page. So this page ends up being a little bit scary to process the first time you see it, but I promise you it'll make sense. So the first thing is simple. This is if you just want to do the head, right? And if you just want to do the head, there is a kind of standardized process called mesh to metahuman, which is built where you basically run a process inside of Unreal, you give it an input mesh, and it'll conform the metahuman topology around that mesh and shape it. And you can attach that to a metahuman body or a non-metahuman body or whatever, but you can animate the face with metahuman animator, facial mocap, all that good stuff. There is a little bit of a hack for extremely stylized characters, but I'll get into that in a minute. That is sort of, solved problem, right? Like sort of doable. The second version of this is just the body, and that's also a relatively solved problem. So the easiest, dumbest version of this is Mixamo, right? So you can like upload whatever mesh into Mixamo, place the body, all that stuff, and you come out with a rigged skeleton, rigged skeletal mesh. AccuRig is a slightly better version of that, which is Realision's free utility for rigging. The only problem is it spits out a UE4 skeleton, not a UE5 skeleton. And so if you want to use that with the control rig, with the UE5 control rig, there are a couple of little changes you have to make for it. It's doable, but there's a little bit of work to do. AutoRig Pro is a plugin for Blender, paid plugin for Blender. There are lots like this, but similar to what I think Sheldon was talking about earlier on. But like I think you're talking about it for Maya, but the AutoRig Pro is for Blender, and it'll spit out a UE5 fully rigged UE5 skeleton for whatever mesh. And so this is also kind of a solved problem. The more complicated one is how do you do the whole thing, right? So how do you take a full body sculpt, face and body, and then make that into a full metahuman face and body, right? Again. And that's complicated because it's not just the bones and everything else, it's also the blend shapes. It's like there's a whole lot of different bits and pieces to that. And so the way I explain that is you start off with your kind of standard metahuman and your stylized mesh, and then you either sculpt or wrap into kind of the stylized shape. So you take the default metahuman topology and either sculpt it to your new shape, or you wrap it around your existing stylized shape with totally different topology. And then you use your new shape, which is the correct shape and the correct topology. You use that to move the bones, because the bones are no longer in the right place, right? If you've changed the mesh, but the bones are in the wrong place. So these plugins, MetaReforge, MetaPipe, Helix Edit, Mesh Morpher, they do a lot of different things, but the main thing that they do that is kind of like magic is automatically moving the bones based on where the geometry has been shifted to. And then once you have the bones and the geometry in the right place, almost everything just works, because the control rig will adapt, the blend shapes are built into the mesh itself. And so like that it's kind of those two steps. It's the wrapping and then the bone shifting, right? So those are the two big things. The kind of side door into this is the character creator workflow, right? Because you have the kind of slider based workflow to design your stylized character in Character Creator. And then you can like run the little script that converts the control rig, sets up the control rig in Unreal. So technically you can do it. Gigi, I think you were saying it's a little buggy sometimes, like it works-ish, but that's kind of the side door into this, right? So you won't have the correct topology or anything like that, but it'll sort of work with the face and body control rigs of humans. So that's a lot of things to put on one page, but that's I'm just trying to explain the full option space for how to set up, how to go from a stylized static mesh all the way to like an animatable metahuman that's rigged for use. Go ahead, Gigi. You had a question.
I was muted.
Yeah.
So, as you mentioned, with the Blender, we can get the skeleton into a custom mesh.
Sure. Yeah.
Or we can take it into AccuRig. Now, those skeletons, out of Blender, out of Character Creator, out of Mixamo, those are different skeletons.
Yeah.
And one thing that a lot of people in the industry, in actual production workflows in the studios, tend to get work out from outsourced contracts and when they get it back, this is what the pain point is, what we are hearing from studios as well, that, wait, we have different skeleton systems, right? So how do we adapt the control rig, like you're talking
Yeah.
about, from the metahuman or the Many and Quinn
Yeah.
to a custom skeleton now? Because
Yeah.
the naming conventions have changed and everything else is
Totally.
different.
I mean, in this process, you throw away the old skeleton. That's what you're doing, right? You're using only the geometry, right? So you can take even a completely unrigged mesh that is just a sculpt.
So it's better to
And
bring in a static mesh and
yeah, so this process is using static meshes. So you throw away the old skeleton. That's what this does.
okay, now you've really got my attention. So
yeah. I mean, but this was the problem I was dealing with, right? Like, because there's so many beautiful sculpts, like Ernesto, right? This guy, he's not rigging that face. Like, he's just sculpted that face. It sits there, right? Like, it's in T-pose. He has it in T-pose, but he's not rigging it. And the topology is a mess. Like, that's not animatable. So my problem is, how do I take that and then make it animatable, right? And so that's why I toss out the skeleton. Like, if there's a skeleton, I toss it out. And then the idea is to fully replace it with a metahuman skull, right? This is the face thing that we were talking about, right? So, and so I'll just very quickly go through this, because there is a hack for very stylized faces. Mesh to metahuman doesn't fully work. So so this is a very stylized face, right? Long chin, all that kind of thing. Mesh to metahuman, if you just normally run it, you will get something like this, right? Which is not quite right, right? It's obviously stylized. It's different. It's not photorealistic, not humanoid, but it's not the same as this. And so there is a command line utility, a command line thing you have to put in early on, which is like this, what's down here at the bottom, mh.identity export meshes, which you have to put in here before you run mesh to metahuman. And if you do that, it will export this conformed mesh version as a byproduct of the mesh to metahuman process. And what that is a wrapped topology, matching topology version of that stylized mesh. And then if you run that through mesh to metahuman again, you will end up with a perfect match of the original thing. So this is not a well-publicized workflow. It's referred to as the conformed mesh workflow. If you Google that, more people have started talking about it now. It was unheard of a year and a half ago, but you basically run the mesh to metahuman process twice, and you can get pretty much an exact match. You will sometimes have things like slightly intersecting geometry, like in this case, you'll see that the eyelids have some intersection geometry, but that's easy enough to fit. Like, I'm no expert sculptor, but just a little bit of like smooth brush, like utility level sculpting, you can clean that up and fix it. And then you have essentially a fully working, completely animatable metahuman face from a very, very stylized shape, right? Okay, so that's the kind of mesh to metahuman hack for getting a perfect match for a very stylized face. The second component was the body. This I don't think we need to go through, but basically this is Mixamo, but a more advanced version of it. Both AccuRig and AutoRig work the same way, pretty much. You just place all these control points, you define the fingers a little bit more clearly, and it'll spit out like a rigged character, mostly pretty well working. So that's the body. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here. This is a fun video though, because he makes the model, the character model in Midjourney or some other AI application, and then drops it into Rodin, which is image to 3D. And so he gets the mesh out of Rodin and then rigs that with AutoRig Pro. So it goes from like an image in an AI generated image in Midjourney or whatever to a fully rigged character, and it's quite impressive. Like it's like a cool workflow. AI ethics aside, I'm not gonna like encourage that kind of thing. And then C is the full version, right? So like how do you take your completely static stylized mesh, end up with a working metahuman? So the this thing on the left is the standard metahuman topology with a standard metahuman skeleton. And like I said, I'm going to show you wrapping. And then we wrap that, just the mesh, right? Just the geometry, the topology. We wrap that topology around the target mesh, right, which has no bones. And then you have the old standard metahuman skeleton, which is there, but it's all in the wrong places. And then this bone fitting happens, that's what the plugins do. They'll fit the bones into the correct places based on how the topology has shifted. Because the topology here and the topology here are identical. It's just the shapes of the mesh has changed. And so it'll cleverly move the bones according to that, basically, right? So this is the core principle of metahumanization. So step one, this is Blender. In this case, I'm not going to do a full live demo. It's about a 45-minute process, like to an hour process. And that's not counting all the mistakes that I always make every time I'm going through it, because there are so many gotchas. But I'm going to run through the major steps. So this on the left, this is the standard metahuman topology. I'm just exported from Unreal as an FBX and imported into Blender as an FBX. So you can see it's got the face bones and it's got like all the body and everything else. It's bones and body. This is the stylized mesh, right? The target mesh that I'm going to rig as a metahuman. This is Meta Reforge, which is a Blender plugin, and it'll set up the units and kind of walk you through the process. Once you kind of have this all set up, you export these things. There are wrapping plugins for Blender itself. They're just not very good. The best wrapping platform, Houdini, is amazing. And then if you can't afford Houdini / are scared of how complicated Houdini is, what I use is Faceform Wrap, which is ZBrush has ZWrap. It's the same application, basically. It's a company called Faceform. And it's it's like dummy Houdini, so it's like a node-based also. But you can load both the geometry of the original metahuman topology and the new stylized one and put them together. Something that's important here is to match the poses, right? So in this case, you can see the poses are slightly different. Like his arms are spread out slightly further and his hands are not facing the exact same way. And the legs are a little closer together. So what I actually do is very quickly rig the stylized one with AccuRig, right? Which is easy enough to do. And then when I'm in Blender, I pose the UE4, the rigged, AccuRigged version of it to closely match the metahuman pose. That makes the wrapping step faster and it makes the bone fitting step more accurate. So match the poses as closely as possible. And then you can see here the poses are matched, right? Like they're very close. The hands are not exact, but they're close. And so what I do is you put them on top of each other, and then I use the cartoon wrapping node. That's the best one for stylized things. And then select point pairs is basically how you define the correspondences. So for example, because sometimes the meshes are very stylized and it's hard to know what is the eyes and so on, the algorithm does a pretty good job of guessing, but you can be more prescriptive, right? So if it's messing up when I remember when I was doing this one, the ears were getting messed up, so I put a lot of guide points on the ears. So in this, you can say this corresponds to this corresponds to this, and you can set up point pairs quite quickly, and you feed that into the wrapping node. And then what it'll do is it'll perfectly wrap the topology around the target shape. Then you can bring that back into Blender and you set it up as a blend shape of the original metahuman topology that you exported, right? And so that's what's been done here, but you can see all the bones are in the wrong place, right? So the bones are hanging out over here. They're in the wrong places here. But you can even see like the eyelashes are in the wrong place over here, like the eyes have moved and so on, but the eyelashes in the wrong place. But Meta Reforge has this magic button called Fit Bones, and when you hit that, all the bones just pop into place. And so before we do that, the other thing to do is move the eyes and the teeth. because those are often in the wrong place, right? Like they're just where the original ones are. So you can position the eye and teeth meshes. You can do that manually. And then there's another little button which basically moves all the little meshes. So things like the eyelashes, the eye shell, it'll automatically push all that into place based on where the topology is shifted.
Okay.
Yeah.
This sounds like black magic. So
Yeah.
brilliant.
Yeah.
So for a person like me who uses a lot of real illusion in my workflow, I've canceled off, Autodesk Maya subscription.
Me too.
I'm an originalist when Elias had Power Animator in Maya.
Wavefront days. Yeah.
Yeah, so for me, real illusion makes sense, and it's similar to a lot of people who use a mixer mode. It's easy, it works. Hit of a button, you get the skeleton. It does a decent job, well, a very good job, and you bring it in, and it works. So if this character now had the AccuRig or Real Illusion skeleton,
yes,
now you have run it through the Zero app, and of course, it has matched in topology and comes back. The skeleton that was hanging out, just for clarification, is the Real Illusion skeleton.
No, the skeleton that's hanging out was the original metahuman skeleton. So you remember how we exported the metahuman body and face? So in this
we
step,
exported it without the skeleton.
No, we export the full skeletal mesh as an FBX. So this is the face and body, which has both. It has all the bones. The face mesh has all the bones visible out there, right? So that's the skeleton that we want to keep, right? We don't want this.
The skin weights out of the metahuman skeleton.
Exactly. Yeah, we're actually using. It's just this. So MetaReforge, what it does actually is it attaches the face and body meshes together to form an intermediate edit shape that we use for all the wrapping. And so that's the thing that we wrap, that we do the wrapping with. And so it attaches those two. And then when we come back in here, that's what's set up as a blend shape. And so this is the metahuman topology and the metahuman skeleton. It's just that the skeleton is in the wrong place. So then when we first we move the eyes into place, and then we hit fit bones, and now all the bones are in the right place. Yep. One button, and then all the bones are in the right place. It is like magic. Like it's genuinely like magic when it happens. And like I'm always in the older versions, it would crash about half the time. And so every time I hit fit, I would save everything. I hit fit bones and keep my fingers crossed, and my breath held, and then see what happens. But the new versions are very stable. So he's also built in the rig logic control board inside of Blender, so you can actually test it before going back to Unreal.
This is the metahuman
MetaReforge. It is. It is the metahuman rig logic. Exactly.
Just to clarify, this is not an open source plugin. It is a paid plugin within the Blender marketplace. So towards the end, if you can also put a link.
I have links to all the software that I mentioned in here. So on this page, there's links to everything that we talk about, including the pricing as well. I know all the devs for these things. They're all really good guys. Like the MetaReforge one literally is made by this kid in Ukraine who he's considering the conditions he's working under, he's insanely responsive. Like he'd be like, "Hey, sorry, I didn't get back to you yesterday. There was a rocket attack when we didn't have power." So
sorry, I'm laughing, but it's like, wow.
No, it's insane. And but he's so talented. Yeah. And his MetaReforge is the cheapest by far of all of these options, right? And so, and it's the one that I use because I use Blender. But if you use Maya, MetaPipe is really common. Helix Edit is very good also. I've played with it a little bit, but because I don't use Maya, I'm not all that. And then actually the most powerful one is Meshmorpher. Meshmorpher is a Mega Grant recipient. Livia is really responsive. He's a good friend. We talk a lot, and he's super knowledgeable about this stuff. I think he literally keeps it expensive so that not too many people will buy it, so he doesn't get bothered too much. But he has a lot of big studios that use it. But it's a very fully featured blend shape editor. It like does much more than just than what these other plugins do. That's partially why it's so expensive. But to finish this off, you can test the full rig logic and everything. You see all the eyelashes and everything else in the right place. That's just like a couple of buttons. Like it's just all done automatically. And then you can test it to make sure it's working. This is important because sometimes the blend shapes are off. So like eyelids, the thing I always test is eye blinks. So do the eyelids close properly? And if they don't, you can do some manual sculpting in here to like clean that up. There is a built-in feature in MetaReforge. All these plugins have something like that to edit the blend shapes manually when you need to do some cleanup. But that's kind of extra credit. The only thing I really usually check is the blinks, and everything else is usually fine. And so now you have it rigged basically, right? So you have like the geometry and the bones and everything else in the right places. And so we just bring it all into Unreal. You can export from MetaReforge and it'll export out. It also does LODs, by the way. So if you want to do all this stuff with like 9 LODs or whatever, it'll do the whole thing and your exports will come out as all the LODs. So you can import with LODs. And so you import all the bits and pieces, and then you have to, so you need the face, the body, and also the DNA file, which metahumans have a DNA file, which defines, it's mostly relevant to the face, but you can reconstruct the entire metahuman from that. And then what I always do is test the face with some metahuman animator performance. And so I like run that through the face and see if it's working. You can actually see I didn't position the teeth very well on this one because they're a little too far in the back, right? And they probably should have been scaled up a little bit, but this is where you can see problems like that. And then you can just go back, rescale the thing, export again, and bring it back in. It's usually quite fast. And then you reconstruct the whole metahuman from the same original one that you used. You can transfer the grooms also. You just have to rebuild the binding asset, and then you can transfer the grooms in as well. And then you're done. You have like a fully animatable metahuman inside of Unreal, which, because it's a metahuman, it'll work with matte or anything else. And that's it. Like, those are the kind of 10 steps to the process. There's a good amount of work here, and like I will eventually do a course where I like explain the whole thing in detail, step by step. It's just the high level kind of guidelines. Like this is more or less how it works. I talked about how expressions and blend shapes are sometimes a little bit of an issue, right? Like getting the details right. And so whether it's penetrations or all that, like all of these plugins, MetaReforge, Meshmorpher, whatever, they all have features that allow you to fix that, and you can tune it. So depending on how much you actually care about it. And so that's all very doable. If you sculpt the whole thing manually, right, without doing any wrapping, you'll have none of these problems because the topology is perfect to start with. But if you're wrapping it, that kind of thing happens. And then this is
people are buying or downloading, the stylized characters of marketplaces, not necessarily Fab, but
other marketplaces, yeah,
Artstation or TurboSquid or wherever, CG Trader, and now with these workflows, they can have a full-fledged metahuman for that character.
Yeah,
I believe we have a question for you from
yeah,
Flo.
for sure.
Will a metahuman and topology work for a very chibi character, Animal Crossing character?
Yeah.
At what point of stylization would the workflow not work?
Great, very good question. Theoretically, you can apply this to any kind of character. Like I've seen kind of stick figure characters with like very simple bones and faces, like dot eyes and things like that, also set up as metahumans. So I don't think there's a technical limitation necessarily. I think there is a point where this is a decent amount of work. And so I think it's really more a question of, is this an appropriate amount of work to rig the character if it's very simple, right? So if the character is like an incredibly simple, like very stylized, very simplistic character, it might be easier to animate with a simpler rig, because the metahuman face you've seen, it's got like 300 bones in it. Like, it's so complicated. So if your character's face doesn't need that, maybe you don't need it. But it is a shortcut to getting a whole lot of facial expression and a bunch of like animation kind of for free or for low effort. And so that's why it's my default. But most of my characters tend to be kind of that mid-level complexity, as opposed to super, super simple. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Yeah. There are really, really very stylized, extremely simplistic, like kind of Animal Crossing kind of characters I've seen rigged as metahumans. So like technically, I don't think there's any kind of barrier. Cool. So this, like I said, was the page which has all the pricing and links to everything. And if you don't want to learn how to do this, you can also just pay Tuna Tools to do it for you. Like they will just take your model and give you back a rigged one, so you can do that too. I mean, this is the thing, right? Like, time is the only truly finite resource, and so it's kind of up to you. Depending on the budget you've got for your project and like your priorities, maybe it's faster. Just pay someone to do it. I did want to show some people that are doing it really well. Like Pixelurge and John CG are both amazing. Like Pixelurge works with Meshmorpher, and he has a full course on how to do this. This is rigged as a metahuman. This character with substrate materials, fully rigged as a metahuman. It's really beautiful work. And then John's really good too. He also has a course. I think Pixelurge's course is better, but John's work is also very, very beautiful. And then Elvis does these extremely realistic, like he focuses on likeness replication, so like replicating specific actors or known faces, that kind of thing. And it's really very impressive what he's been able to do. And then there's a bunch of links around like the official documentation, some white papers that describe some of the under the hood mechanics of metahumans, and all of that stuff, if you're interested. And that's pretty much it. That's all I've got. And we're almost out of time, so I guess that's good timing. Was there anything I can go over like in more detail if there's stuff that anybody is interested in, or I can also cover any other questions or anything else you guys want to do for the rest of the time? But that's all the material I had.
Brilliant. Now, of course, everything leads me to seeing what is in the workshop. What's cooking? What's the next big thing?
All the stuff I showed you is not enough?
It's never enough, Anthony, you know that.
Yeah, well, those are the tools that I'm building. The film stuff on the other side, like ostensibly all these things are to help me make my films, and so the film projects are technically the actual job. And so there are kind of three things in different stages. One is called Machines Learning. That's a short that I'm making entirely myself. Actually, the cover page, which was right up front, this is from Machines Learning. It's not an incredibly obvious AI parable or anything like that. But yeah, so that's one. And then the second one is a sort of micro series that I'm making with a small studio in Madrid. It's a former mentor of mine who's actually being very kind, and his little studio of like 5 artists are helping me make all the assets for another series that I'm doing. And then the third one is in like script, like concepting stage, but that's a much bigger, much more ambitious project that I'll need real funding for. So I'm building a pitch deck and all of that stuff. So I'm gonna try the more traditional route on that one and see what happens. But yeah.
Flo has one more question.
Yeah. Before I could rig my characters inside of Unreal. Yes. Technically you can, but it sucks. Is the short answer. So there is sorry, that's a little harsh. Actually, it's gotten a lot better. But for rigging a whole character is too much. It's really too much to do. Like there's a fairly decent weight painting interface, right, for skeletal meshes. It's really more designed for if you want to do little fixes to something that's been rigged somewhere else, you can do that in Unreal without round tripping. And I think it's designed for kind of typical workflows in teams where you've got like one person in Unreal and one person in a DCC, and they're like sending stuff back and forth. And the Unreal person is roadblocked because the weight painting has to be done somewhere else. So I think that's why it's been set up, so you can like make little fixes. It's not bad. Like you can technically rig a very simple character in Unreal and it wouldn't be terrible. But something like this, forget it. Like it's just way too much. And yeah, it's not completely. It wouldn't be impractical. It wouldn't be practical. But if you want to rig like, I don't know, like like a robot with like 20 bones or something like that, like you could relatively easily do it. And some of the demos they show have like a robot shark or something like that. It's got like 8 segments, things like that, which are weight painted. I think there's one in which he adds some bones to make a fin on a dragon wave, that kind of thing. So you can do adjustments like that, and it's not bad. Yes, exactly. Chase's talk on exactly that, but it's relatively simple.
And I have to completely agree with you with the skeleton editor inside Unreal Engine is good, but it is still at a very rudimentary stage at the moment. It is highly experimental. The skin weight painting tool does a decent enough job, but especially if you have, let's say, multiple clothing that have bones attached to particular flaps or something like that, that's where the skin painting, the weight painting, doesn't really work the way it would work in a traditional DCC at this moment. But watch the space with Unreal Fest around the corner, 5.6 coming out.
Yeah. The speed at which they build new, I mean, like, we know the size of the teams, like they're not huge teams. The speed at which they put new stuff out always blows my mind. And, while it is a little bit annoying that stuff is sometimes broken when it comes out, like they kind of use us as, the ways of fixing it, like guinea pigs to fix it. It is still pretty cool how fast it advances. So like,
kudos to the teams, yes.
Totally. Yeah. I feel bad for saying it sucks. Like, considering what it does, then it's completely free. Like it's
no problem. We'll fix it in post. That's coming from an editor. Whatever. On that note, I believe what you are working on and the workflows that you've shown today, I have to say, I never call myself a master. 3 decades coming in the industry, film and entertainment media and Unreal and all this, but for me, I definitely learned so much. And for me, this is just pure logic for indie creators. And not only for indie creators, but for studios who are scared to kind of make
the jump. Yeah, totally.
Jump, and we've heard about Crafty Apes and others who are struggling to kind of catch on, and they bring on 1 or 2 people who understand Unreal, but then there's so much workload, and clients are going and asking these questions. Do you know how to work with metahumans? Do you know how to do this? So this is where I think what you have shown today, it actually answers so many important questions. And I mean, like I said in the beginning, I will join your class, looking forward to your special masterclass on this when it happens.
Great. Yeah. I'm glad. Yeah, it's like a lot of this stuff has felt more complicated than it should be. But I think the fact that there are so many people that have been building such powerful tools to make it happen means that there's an obvious demand in the industry for it. But it is so much easier to do today than it was even a year ago. So like that I guess is the positive. But yeah, no, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure to do this, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I hope it was useful.
Absolutely, Anthony. I just want to say big thank you. It was very, very insightful.
Of course.
And I really absolutely enjoyed it as well. And I just want to say to everyone, We have people who would want to speak more, so maybe
Yeah, I can stay. That's all right.
they can unmute themselves, I assume. So maybe Sheldon, then was it Dodo who was the next one? Sheldon, can you unmute yourself?
No, we
Or
will
you need to do it. Okay. Just a second.
Sheldon, go ahead. You should be able to speak now.
Yes,
Guys
can
wanna
everybody hear
take
me
a
okay?
Yeah,
Yeah.
hey Sheldon, what's up?
Hey, everybody. Just starting off, thank you, Jesus, and Brigida for setting up this call. This was amazing. Anthony, thank you for all the information that you gave today. It was really awesome to be able to have tools that makes, Unreal. It's already fun to begin with, but now you've made it even more fun and less strenuous now.
Good. I'm glad.
Yeah, I don't think I have I don't think I have any additional questions. I think just want to be able to where can we go outside of your LinkedIn to kind of keep up with your progress with
Yeah. Sorry, I saw you'd asked that in the chat. I forgot to get to that. Yeah, I'm Locodrome on YouTube and Instagram, and I haven't written anything on Medium in a while, but like those are the best two places to like find me. I guess I probably post most frequently on LinkedIn, just because there is so much of the community on there. But I do post stuff to YouTube and Instagram too.
Okay, sounds good.
On that note, Sheldon, watch the space. So there are things that we are working in the background. So all you participants who have joined these calls or the previous calls, we do keep a list. So we will be sending out information as and when we are closer to a masterclass.
Was there anyone else who wanted to speak? Does anyone else needs to be unmuted? Please raise the hand.
I think Dodo did. I'm not sure.
Dodo, you should be able to speak if you want to unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hello.
Hi, not sure why it shows Dodo. My name is Ndea Lavelle. Thank you so much for today. Yeah. I just had the same question as Sheldon. So yeah, but thank you so much.
Oh yeah. No, absolutely my pleasure.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
I'm glad it was helpful.
Okay. On that note, I also want to say, as academic director for Virtual Production Dojo, we are now this year, we got the Golden Unreal Authorized Training Center badge. We are very proud of it, but at the same time, it also stipulates that we need to kind of also update our courses and develop new courses. That was big stimulus for us. So we are all working on it. So please do somehow pin Virtual Production Dojo in your web browser, or as Jesse says, probably you might be getting newsletters. We are having one additional mini course which will have some relations to what was happening today, and it will be about control rig. So this should be up. I really think this should be up till this weekend, and it's basically finished, but it just needs to be uploaded and all that. So please watch the space. We are planning more. We want to work more on the UFN side of things, and a few other aspects. And this session with Anthony today was very inspiring, and we will also endeavor that if we might have monthly sessions like this. So again, watch the space, because I think we have things lined up in a pipeline, and hopefully we will be able to roll them all out.
Cool.
Yes,
That's exciting.
Yeah. So definitely, I'm constantly learning, and now with what you've just shown, especially with the simple fortnight simple phase and the new version, Fortnite 2.0, if we can call it that, which is like in between to a meta-human, and now we can bring the optimized meta-humans inside EFN.
Right.
I mean, it's just logic, and especially from those working in the industry, working in a advertising agency, commercial studios, commercial brands are jumping into Fortnite. and they're making the custom experiences, and that is
Exactly.
I mean,
And to animate those faces, that's the problem, right? And
Yeah.
there is a Fortnite control rig for the simple face that's inside of UEFN, but if you want to use all the powerful stuff in UE, you can't get that control rig in UE
no, you can't export anything out of
because it's one
Fortnite.
dot version ahead, so you can't move. I tried, believe me, I tried. I did the classic thing of like, you can copy all the nodes into Notepad and
Yeah,
then,
the logic doesn't
paste.
transfer.
I tried everything. I don't like torturing myself, so I wasn't going to build local face unless it was absolutely necessary.
You don't need to sleep, but tomorrow you'll have it.
Exactly. So, but yeah, no, nothing worked. So I couldn't get it into Unreal. And so that's why I was like,
Yeah.
I'm just going to build it myself.
That's what happens. You see, necessity is the mother of invention, and you have actually proven it right here, right in front of everyone in a way. So, I mean, this is amazing. So please watch the space, as Brigitte mentioned. Anthony, once again, on behalf of Virtual Production Dojo and personally myself, thank you so much. I've learned so much.
Oh, good.
It
I'm glad.
inspired me to actually jump into your tools, which I have already got in my library, but never got a chance.
Yeah.
But now it's like it's a no-brainer. Why have I been trying to hold my nose this way? It means only fix it. But
Good. Yeah. Well, as you play with it and have ideas, send me a feedback and all that good stuff. I'm always listening for that.
yes, please, everyone, if you can, post about Anthony's wonderful tools. The link.
Oh
is
yeah, sure. That'd be great.
Chat as well. So please, if you don't have it already, it is free for users to download from Fab and Gumroad, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah. If you just Google Fab Locodrum or Gumroad Locodrum, you'll find it.
Yeah, so please get your hands on it. While the offer lasts, kind of thing. And start playing with it. And please, no question is a silly question. Click it over to Anthony. Connect with Brigitte and I on LinkedIn. We all live and breathe on LinkedIn. Seriously. So thank you so much once again.
Yeah, do connect with me.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Anthony.
Cool. So good to see you all. My pleasure. Take care. Thank you.